Stop what you're doing for just a second and listen to me. Do you hear that? That faint electrical whistle. That thin, high-pitched ringing that doesn't seem to come from the room around you, but from somewhere deep inside your own head. It's subtle at first, easy to ignore, until it isn't. Until it follows you into the quiet, into the moments when everything else finally shuts off, and suddenly, it's the only thing you can hear.
Most people call it tinnitus. Your doctor probably called it age-related. Maybe they told you it's common after 60. Maybe they handed you a brochure, suggested a white noise machine, and told you to get used to it. But I want you to understand something right now. That sound is not normal. It is not harmless, and it is not something you are supposed to live with. I'm Dr. Daniel Reeves, and after decades of working with patients across this country, I can tell you with certainty, that sound is a warning. It's an alarm. Your nervous system is trying to get your attention, because something inside your body is no longer being supported the way it should be. And if your ears won't stop ringing, your body is not aging, it's starving. Now I know what you've been told. You've been told your labs look fine. You've been told everything is within range. You've been told there's nothing serious going on. But let me ask you something. If everything is fine, then why does your head feel like it's buzzing at night? Why does it get louder when the world gets quieter? Why does it wake you up at 2 or 3 in the morning when there's nothing else there? The truth is, the system most people rely on was never designed to catch this early. Because in medicine, normal doesn't mean healthy. Normal means you're not sick enough yet. Normal means you fall somewhere in the middle of a population that is already struggling. Normal is the average of a sick population, and that's where people get lost. Because your hearing doesn't just disappear. It doesn't fail overnight. It weakens slowly. Your auditory system, your inner ear, your nerve pathways, your brain's ability to process sound depends on a constant supply of oxygen, nutrients, and chemical balance. When that supply starts to break down, your system doesn't go silent. It does the opposite. It starts making noise, not because there is sound, but because something inside is malfunctioning. I see this every single week. People walk into my office frustrated, exhausted, and confused. They've done the tests, they've seen the specialists, and still, they're told nothing is wrong. But something is. One of those people was George Miller, 71 years old, retired firefighter out of Dallas. Strong, disciplined, the kind of man who spent his life running toward danger. But when he sat down in front of me, he looked worn down. Not from age, from exhaustion. He leaned forward, lowered his voice, and said something I've heard more times than I can count. "Doc, it's not in my ears, it's inside my head." And in that moment, I knew exactly what was happening. Because what George was experiencing didn't start with sound. It started long before that, with something his body had been missing for years. And if you're hearing that same noise right now, there's a very high chance your body is missing it too. And if what I'm describing sounds familiar to you, stay with me, because what you're about to learn could change everything. And in the next step, I'm going to show you exactly where that breakdown begins. Because what George was experiencing didn't start in his ears. And this is where most people get it wrong. They think this is a hearing problem. It's not. Your ears are not the source of that sound. Your brain is. Let me explain this as simply as I can. Deep inside your inner ear, there are microscopic blood vessels, so small that a single red blood cell barely fits through them. These vessels are responsible for delivering oxygen and nutrients to the most delicate structures in your body, the cells that convert vibration into sound. When those cells are healthy, they send clean, accurate signals to your brain. But when something interrupts that supply, even slightly, those cells don't just shut down. They start malfunctioning. They send distorted signals, incomplete signals, false signals, and your brain doesn't know the difference. It takes that broken input and tries to make sense of it. It amplifies it, repeats it, loops it, until what you're hearing is no longer sound from the outside world, but noise generated from inside your own nervous system. You're hearing a feedback loop, not sound. Now the question becomes, What disrupts that supply in the first place? This is where we get to the first root cause. Cause number 1, thick blood and poor circulation. And I see this constantly in patients across the US. A lifetime of processed foods, low physical activity, chronic low-grade inflammation that builds quietly over decades. What that does to your blood is subtle, but devastating. It makes it thicker, slower, less efficient. Now imagine trying to push that thickened blood through vessels that are thinner than a human hair. It doesn't flow. It struggles. It slows down just enough to reduce oxygen delivery to those sensitive auditory cells. And when those cells don't get what they need, they start to suffocate. Not enough to die immediately, just enough to malfunction. And that malfunction is what your brain interprets as ringing. Like trying to water a plant with clogged pipes. The water is there, but it's not reaching where it needs to go. I remember when George told me he hadn't exercised in years. Said his knees hurt too much. Most of his meals came from boxes, cans, or drive-through windows. He didn't think it had anything to do with his hearing, but it had everything to do with it. Because when circulation slows down, your nervous system pays the price first. Now there's a second layer to this problem, and it's one most people completely overlook. Cause number 2, vitamin D3 deficiency. And this one is far more common than people realize. In this country, especially as we age, we spend more time indoors. We avoid the sun. We use sunscreen constantly, and slowly, without noticing, our vitamin D levels drop. But vitamin D3 is not just for bones. It acts like a regulatory hormone for your nervous system. It controls the expression of hundreds of genes responsible for repair, protection, and inflammation control. Without it, your body doesn't just slow down healing, it stops repairing altogether. So now think about what's happening. You already have reduced blood flow. Your auditory cells are already under stress. And now, your body has lost its ability to repair the damage. Without D3, your nervous system has no foreman. No one is directing the repair process. No one is fixing the broken signals. So the noise continues. And over time, it gets worse. This is the moment most people begin to realize something important. This isn't just about your ears. This is your entire system starting to fall out of balance. And what we've uncovered so far is only the beginning of what's really driving that sound. Because even if you improve blood flow, even if you restore some level of repair, there is still another layer happening inside your brain that most people never see. This is where the problem turns from physical to chemical. And this is where the noise starts to spiral. Cause number 3, magnesium deficiency, combined with chronic stress. Now let's talk about what life actually looks like for most people over 60 in this country. Retirement doesn't always mean peace. For many it means uncertainty. Fixed income, rising costs, less social interaction, long stretches of silence during the day, and even longer nights. That kind of stress doesn't just affect your mood, it changes your brain chemistry. Inside your brain there's a chemical called glutamate. Think of glutamate as the gas pedal. It stimulates nerve activity, it keeps signals moving, it keeps your brain alert. But every gas pedal needs a brake. And that brake is magnesium. Magnesium calms the system down. It regulates nerve firing, it prevents overstimulation. Now here's the problem. As we age, magnesium levels drop. Diet changes. Absorption declines. Stress increases depletion even faster. So what happens? You press the gas, but the brake is gone. Your brain doesn't slow down. It speeds up. Signals fire faster, harder, more aggressively, and instead of controlled communication, you get chaos. This is what we call a glutamate storm. Your auditory system, already weakened by poor circulation and lack of repair, gets flooded with excessive signals, and your brain starts to amplify everything. Every small signal becomes louder, sharper, more intrusive. That's why the ringing gets worse after a stressful day. That's why it spikes when you're lying in bed at night, when there are no distractions left, because your brain is stuck in overdrive. It doesn't know how to shut off. And without magnesium, it can't. Now let's layer something even more dangerous on top of that, something millions of Americans rely on every single day, without ever questioning it. Cause number 4. Ototoxic medications. I'm talking about common, over-the-counter drugs, aspirin, NSAIDs, pain relievers taken for joint pain, back pain, headaches, especially in older adults. These are not rare exposures. These are daily habits. But what most people are never told is that these substances can be toxic to your auditory system. They increase the production of free radicals, unstable molecules that attack and damage your cells. And the cells they hit hardest are the ones inside your inner ear, the same cells that are already struggling from poor circulation, the same cells that are already under chemical stress. So now imagine what's happening. You have reduced oxygen, you have impaired repair, you have an overactive nervous system, and now you're introducing a compound that directly damages the very cells you're trying to protect. You're trying to put out a fire, while pouring gasoline on the other side. I remember when George told me about his routine. Every morning he took aspirin, every afternoon, another dose for his knee pain. He thought he was managing discomfort. He had no idea he was feeding the very problem that was keeping him awake at night. No one had ever connected those dots for him. If this sounds like your daily routine, you're not alone. But this is exactly where things begin to change. And that's the moment most people start to see it. Not as a random condition, not as bad luck, but as a pattern, a set of daily habits, slowly building toward a system that can no longer regulate itself. And once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. Because what feels random, what feels like something that just happened to you, is actually a chain reaction. And we're not done yet. There are still 3 more pieces to this puzzle, and for many people, these are the ones that push the system past the breaking point. Cause number 5. Vitamin B12 deficiency. This is one of the most overlooked issues in older adults across the United States. Not because people don't consume B12, but because their bodies can no longer absorb it the way they used to. As we age, stomach acid declines, digestive efficiency drops, and even with a decent diet, B12 levels slowly fall. Now here's why that matters. Vitamin B12 is essential for maintaining the protective coating around your nerves, what we call the myelin sheath. That sheath acts like insulation on an electrical wire. It keeps signals contained, clean, precise. But when B12 levels drop, that insulation begins to break down. It thins, it weakens, and eventually, it starts to leak. Signals don't travel the way they should. They scatter, they spark, they misfire, and your brain picks up that interference as sound, like a frayed electrical wire. You're not hearing something external, you're hearing your own nervous system short circuit. Now combine that with everything we've already talked about, poor circulation, lack of repair, chemical overload, and you start to understand how fragile this system really is. But there's another reason the noise becomes unbearable, especially at night. Cause number 6. Disrupted circadian repair cycles. You've probably noticed this. The ringing gets louder, right when everything else gets quiet. Around 2, 3 in the morning. And most people assume it's because there are no distractions. But that's not the full story. At night, your body shifts into repair mode. This is when your nervous system tries to restore balance, rebuild damaged cells, reset chemical activity. But that process requires raw materials. It needs magnesium. It needs B12. It needs oxygen. It needs everything we've already talked about. And if those materials aren't there, the repair process doesn't just slow down. It stalls. So now your brain detects incomplete signals, unresolved damage, and instead of ignoring it, it amplifies it. It turns up the volume, trying to locate the problem. That's why the noise wakes you up. Not because your body is resting, but because it's struggling to fix something it doesn't have the tools to repair. And finally, there's one last piece that quietly accelerates everything. Cause number 7. Zinc deficiency. Now this one surprises people, because zinc isn't something most associate with hearing. but it plays a critical role in protecting your auditory cells from oxidative stress. Every time your hearing system processes sound, it generates free radicals. That's normal. But zinc acts as a shield. It neutralizes that damage before it spreads. The problem is, modern diets make it very difficult to maintain proper zinc levels. Processed cereals, refined grains, packaged foods that dominate the standard American diet. They don't just lack zinc. They actively block its absorption. So even when you consume it, your body can't use it, and over time, without that protection, your auditory cells begin to break down, slowly, quietly, until one day, they start sending signals that were never meant to be heard. At this point, something begins to shift. Because when you step back and look at all 7 of these causes together, the picture becomes clear. This was never just one problem. It's a system-wide breakdown. And for the first time, everything starts to connect. Because once you understand that this isn't just one problem, but a system-wide breakdown, the solution becomes clear. You don't fix this with a single pill. You don't silence it with a machine. You rebuild the system. You restore what your body has been missing. And it starts with something simple, something most people overlook completely. What you feed your body at the exact moment it tries to repair itself. I call this the evening reset protocol, because the timing matters just as much as the nutrients. Let's break it down. At the center of this protocol is a meal designed to deliver exactly what your auditory system has been deprived of for years. Not randomly, not occasionally, but consistently. You start with wild-caught Alaskan salmon. This gives you 2 critical components at once: omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D3. Omega-3s improve blood flow. They make your cell membranes more flexible, more responsive. They allow oxygen and nutrients to actually reach those microscopic vessels in your inner ear. And D3, as we talked about earlier, reactivates the repair system. It signals your body to start fixing what's been left unattended. Next, you add dark leafy greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard. These are rich in magnesium. This is how you bring the brake system back online. This is how you calm the overactive nerve firing. This is how you begin to quiet the glutamate storm that's been keeping your brain in overdrive. Then you include a handful of raw pumpkin seeds. This is your zinc source. This is your antioxidant shield. This is what protects your auditory cells from further breakdown while the repair process begins. Add in eggs. High-quality bioavailable vitamin B12. This is how you rebuild the insulation around your nerves. This is how you stop the signal leakage. This is how you stabilize the electrical system that's been short-circuiting. And finally, you bring in fresh ginger and garlic. Not as flavor, as function. These are natural vasodilators. They open up your blood vessels, they improve circulation, they help push nutrients into places they haven't reached in years. Now here's the part most people miss. This meal isn't just about what you eat. It's about when you eat it. Your body does its deepest repair at night. That window, between late evening and early morning, is when your nervous system tries to reset. If the nutrients aren't there during that window, nothing gets fixed. So this meal becomes your signal, your instruction to the body. This is when we rebuild. And when you do this consistently, something begins to change, not overnight, not instantly, but steadily. The noise doesn't disappear all at once. It pulls back, it softens, it moves further away. Now beyond the meal, there are a few habits that accelerate this process. You walk, just 20 minutes a day, enough to improve circulation, enough to keep blood moving. You get morning sunlight, natural exposure. That's how you restore your D3 levels the way your body was designed to. You reduce caffeine, because overstimulation keeps your nervous system in that same overdrive state. And most importantly, you stop relying on daily painkillers unless absolutely necessary, because every dose continues to feed the problem. This is not complicated, but it is precise, because at the end of the day, this isn't about managing symptoms. It's about restoring function. You don't need a pill, you need fuel. And if you're serious about getting your silence back, this is where you start. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. And once George understood that, everything began to change. Not overnight, not in a dramatic, instant moment, but steadily, quietly, the way real healing happens. I remember exactly when he came back in, 6 weeks later. He walked into my office differently. Same man, same posture, but something had shifted. There was no tension in his face, no exhaustion behind his eyes. He sat down, leaned back, and for the first time since I met him, he smiled. I asked him one simple question. "How's the noise?" He paused, not because it was gone, but because he had to think about it. Then he said something I will never forget. "It's quieter, and for the first time, I feel peace." That's when you know the system is coming back online. Not when the sound disappears completely, but when it stops controlling your life, when it fades into the background, when your brain finally lets go of the loop. George told me he slept through the night for the first time in years. No 2 a.m. wake-ups, no pacing the floor, no sitting in the dark, waiting for the noise to stop. Just silence. The kind of silence most people take for granted, until it's gone. And a few weeks after that, he sent me something. A photo. Him sitting on a park bench, his grandson next to him, laughing. And George wrote, "I forgot what this sounded like." That moment right there. That's what this is really about. It's not just about stopping a sound, it's about getting your life back. Because you were never broken, your body didn't fail you, it adapted the best way it could with what it had. But what it had wasn't enough. Your body is not broken, it's underfed, and once you give it what it needs, it starts to fix what you thought was permanent. So if you're hearing that sound right now, don't ignore it, don't accept it, and don't let anyone tell you it's just part of getting older, because it's not. It's a signal, and now you finally understand what it's been trying to tell you. If this helped you, share it with one person you know who is struggling with this right now. Not everyone talks about it, but millions are dealing with it in silence. Write in the comments and tell me, how long has that sound been there? I read every story, and your experience helps guide what I study next. I'm Dr. Daniel Reeves, and your health is the only metric that matters. I'll see you in the next consultation.